orgy of violence, which has consumed hundreds of communities in southern Kaduna, Nigeria, an area that is home to a predominantly Christian population, has been explained away by the Nigerian government as a result of a farmers-herders conflict. The Buhari administration officials have also tried in the past to apply this same explanation to other places in the country, where violence often traces the wake of these pastoralists and their livestock. But for months, after the first major attacks were reported, President Buhari had maintained a studied silence. But last weekend, he finally got talking, telling a summit in Kaduna that peace and harmony are the quintessential ingredients for development, and asking those behind the violence to live like brothers and sisters. Why did it take President Buhari so long to speak on this matter? And how deep or honest were those remarks? Was the president just being politically correct? Joining us now to attend to these questions and a lot more is Dr. Kabir Adamu, a security affairs consultant and chief executive officer, Beacon Consulting, a security risk management and intelligence consulting company. Dr. Adamu, it's good to have you again on the morning show. Good morning.
Good morning, Dr. Ruben.
Yes, good morning. Well, will it ever be possible for the people of Southern Kaduna, the various ethnic communities there, divided along religious and ethnic lines, to be able to live together like brothers and sisters, as President Buhari is advising?
There is no option, frankly. He made that remark at an investment forum, and if, given the enormous resources that Kaduna State has and that the people actually require, they want investors to come in, then they have no option but to live in peace. However, what is stopping them from living in peace? What are the challenges? Why is the federal government and the state government not addressing those challenges? Those are the things that we need to deconstruct and get to the bottom of. I don't think there is any community that is logical, rational, that would not want to live in peace. But there is definitely something stopping them from living in peace. And that is, I think, what the government has failed to address. And one of the biggest, I would say, I'll call it the elephant in the room, is the ungoverned spaces that exist, especially in southern Kaduna, vast forested areas, mountainous areas that do not seem to have any semblance of government presence in them. We need to take into consideration the fact that Kaduna State is one of the most garrisoned states in the country, probably the most garrisoned, and I say this with all sense of responsibility. The Operation Safe Haven that was existing in Plateau State was extended to Kaduna State. Aside from that, you have different security formations, military, police, specifically in southern Kaduna. But all of this have not addressed this single point of ungoverned spaces where sometimes these criminals use as havens and then they perpetrate their attack. If you engage with victims of kidnapping, this is what they tell you. They are kidnapped usually sometimes on the highway while traveling, or sometimes in their residences. And then they take them into these ungoverned spaces. So why is it that our security architecture at both the federal and at the state level is yet to address that? So there are a multitude of issues that is preventing the people of southern Kaduna and the Kaduna State as a whole from living in peace. And until the government, at both the federal and state government, address this multitude of challenges, unfortunately, the kind of political statement that we had a few days ago by Mr. President will not solve the problem, unfortunately.
Yes, why indeed? So the reports that have come out recently about more troops being deployed to Kaduna, more boots on ground and what have you, might still fail to hit the mark. Is that what you're saying? Because those reports have cause for hope to be renewed, that the Governor El-Rufai's hopes of being the one who will end this lasting legacy of violence, that's going to be a key part of his legacy. But you're saying that it's not about numbers necessarily, it's about the strategy.
Exactly. If it were about numbers, frankly, the cycle of violence would have ended by now. I made the point that Kaduna is probably the most garrisoned, state in the country. But still, the killings are ongoing. So it's not about numbers. It's more about strategy. And we can't talk about the administration of criminal justice. Why is it that offenders are not being punished? I know that Governor Rufai has attempted to put together previous reports on commissions of inquiry into the killings in Kaduna. And by doing that, he's saying that once the collated reports are brought forward to him, he would not look anyone in the face and will go about implementing the recommendations of that report. But unfortunately, previous governments, and including his own government, has been guilty of that in implementing the recommendations of such reports. So impunity, lawlessness has not been punished, and that means one of the key elements of any justice system, which is the deterrence factor, is not being addressed. So no matter how you deploy boots on the ground, if you do not ensure that administration of criminal justice, offenders are being punished, then people would continue what they're doing. Another very important element is the small arms and light weapons that are in circulation in Kaduna State. These killings are not done by ghosts. They are done by individuals who carry AK-47 and sometimes even weapons beyond AK-47. I'm aware that RPGs are being used to shoot at Nigerian Air Force by some of these gunmen. So there are small arms and light weapons in circulation. And neither at the federal government or at the state government have we seen any coordinated effort to mop up these small arms and light weapons. The gun-running channels that are supplying these gunmen with these weapons, small arms and light weapons, is yet to be addressed. The porosity of our borders. And, I want to link this to the ungoverned spaces that I talked about. Some of these ungoverned spaces run across our borders into neighboring countries. So it's very easy, for instance, to use them to channel these weapons to those that are perpetrating the act. So until all of this is addressed, including climate change, global warming and climate change, that unfortunately is also feeding the farmer-herder conflict, and we're not seeing any concerted effort in that. So a multitude of factors. One of the greatest things that disturbs me is the narrative, and unfortunately, and I say this with all sense of responsibility, the media is sometimes guilty of this single narrative where you pick up a paper and you get the sense that it's a single victim and single perpetrator situation in Kaduna. It's beyond that. Reports have come out, including by my own consultancy, that have shown clearly both sides are actually killing, and both sides are actually armed. One of the most revealing reports is the one by one of the international groups, Institute for Peace, where they showed that ethnic militia and politicians are actually sometimes arming some of these gunmen and who are behind the killings. And till date, none of these, perpetrators, as it were, that are at the background, who are arming these ethnic militias, who are arming the gunmen, is yet to be punished. So, multitude of factors. Boots on the ground is not the solution to this. Until all of these issues that I've mentioned are addressed at both the federal and state level, unfortunately, I do not see the killings coming to an end.
I just want to ask this honestly. What is different about this Southern Kaduna crisis? I mean, we've had many, fights and crises in the country, and they've been resolved. I can remember the Ife and Modakeke. I can remember the Ijo and the Shekiri in Delta State. But all those people are living in peace and harmony again. What is really, can I use the word in quote, it about this crisis in Southern Kaduna?
A part of it is the geopolitics of the state. You have a group of people that, frankly, on their own, cannot determine the political outcome of any elections in the state. And if you look at the history of the state, I think except by a stroke of chance, when Governor Yakowa became the governor, no one from that particular political region of the state has been able to emerge, mainly because of numbers. And so what kind of politics, how do you provide a platform for inclusion within the geopolitics of the state that would make that particular segment of the state feel they belong and they are carried along within the geopolitics of the state. Unfortunately, I think part of the challenge for the current governor is that he has not been able to do that. And to be fair to him, it appeared he attempted to do that, but his peace and his attempts at bringing on board that region was rebuffed. And during the 2019 elections, we saw it clearly. There were statements by leaders from that region telling him clearly, we're not going to vote for you. And so he also made, I would say, a political, a statement that should never have been made by a politician when he said, well, whether with you or not, I would actually win the elections. And he was right, because the numbers are against them. So to that extent, the representative nature of the state is not helping this situation until a situation is arrived at where each and every part of the state feels represented and that they are being carried along, then maybe this feeling of resentment and to an extent feeling of disenchantment by this particular segment of the state would reduce. You can argue that his deputy is from that state. You can also argue that he has several commissioners that are, from that region of the state. Several of his commissioners are also from that region of the state. But then those that are calling the shots, the political leaders from Southern Kaduna, do they feel that she's representing them politically? No, unfortunately. So I think that is the crux of the matter. In a government of inclusion, a representative government that sees each and every member of the state as belonging and being carried along. On their part, too, the residents of Southern Kaduna, they also need to understand that you cannot isolate yourself and take this, I would say, very rigid stand against the sitting governor and then, hope that you would have your way. Politics is about compromise. It's about reaching out and then understanding, somehow the basis of each side and then agreeing to move forward. Unfortunately, we are not seeing that at the moment.
Well, Dr. Adamu, you've identified quite a number of factors affecting the situation in Southern Kaduna. But religion will seem to be a very big part of it. And the Christian Association of Nigeria continues to insist that what is going on in Southern Kaduna is a case of genocide, targeting ethnic minorities and also Christians who seem to have been holding the short end of the stick in the attacks. In fact, at one point, the Christian Association of Nigeria was threatening. Some persons were threatening that they too would take up arms. Now, would you like to comment on this, the role of religion in that conflict? And why is it that every time, as recently as July and August, the attacks were carried out from one community to the other? The security agencies were nowhere to be found for days on end. Is there a case of complicity on the part of the security agencies?
I mentioned in my earlier remarks, Dr. Ruben, that there is this single narrative, single victim, single perpetrator narrative, and unfortunately, it is not helping the situation. With all sense of responsibility, I'm going to quote almost verbatim what a DPO in Kafanchan, who is from southeastern Nigeria, told me when I went for an assessment. Of my consultancy was given a project, and then I went there. I'm not going to mention names, but I'll quote what he said for it would give us a context of what is happening. He's Catholic, and he said when he was deployed to Kafanchan that for the first time in his life, he's seen a notion of Christianity that he's never known, that the notion of turning the other cheek in that part of Southern Kaduna in Kafanchan, that Christians in that part don't believe that they would actually slap you in anticipation that you are going to slap them. I know this is a controversial statement, but I'm quoting it just to give you a sense of the type of situation that we have in Southern Kaduna because of years of violence, doctrines, age-long doctrines and religious doctrines have been dropped. Unfortunately. So religion, yes, it plays a role. But then if we use it, judiciously like we should use it, it should actually help in providing the solution that we should. And to that extent, I think all sides need to take a break and reappraise the situation. It is absolutely, I think, wrong to continue to propagate this single victim perpetrator narrative. Both sides are killing, unfortunately. Both sides are armed, but you rarely hear when the other sides are being killed. I know this because, like I said, I do have a consultancy and I work in Southern Kaduna. I understand this. Just yesterday, Premium Times released an investigative report. It will be instructive for our listeners to go, look at that report, and then they will get this point that I'm making. It is not a single victim perpetrator situation. It's a very complex situation. There are armed militias on both sides, unfortunately, and then of course sometimes the situations are reprisal killings. Religious leaders should take a breath, reappraise the situation, and then preach doctrines of diversity, doctrines of tolerance, as against this single victim perpetrator narrative.
Where are the security agencies? Why are they always so negligent, if not complicit?
I would still stick to my point. Kaduna State is one of the most garrisoned states in Nigeria. The challenges that affect that Kaduna State are the challenges that affect the security architecture in Nigeria. My point around the inability of the security agencies to dominate the ungoverned spaces and forested areas in Kaduna State is a fact, and I stand to be challenged. The vast forests, Birnin Gwari as an example. Nobody is speaking about Birnin Gwari. Yes, it doesn't fall into the binary narrative of Christian, Muslim fighting one another because they are all Muslims fighting each other, as it were. But the rate of killings in Birnin Gwari is probably more than in Southern Kaduna. If you talk to farmers in Birnin Gwari, they can't go out to farm because, frankly, kidnappers and gunmen have dominated that area. They're one of the largest forest reserves in the area is in Birnin Gwari, and so they are constantly being targeted by these gunmen. So it's not that the security agencies in Kaduna are complicit. Rather, the same challenges that have allowed killings in Katsina, that have allowed killing in Zamfara, are also the same challenges that are allowing killing in Southern Kaduna. And until, as a people, we call these security agencies to account and ask critical questions. Why are you allowing these killings? Why are you failing to punish offenders? Then, unfortunately, these killings will go on. Our security architecture lacks in totality a credible, effective, and efficient monitoring and evaluation mechanism that would allow this type of questioning and holding them to accountability. It does not make sense for a state. And to that extent, I would want to commend Governor El-Rufai. He's one of the first state, probably not the pioneer state, to create the Ministry of Homeland Security. Just to tell you how much he has prioritized security, he created that ministry, appointed one of the most, I would say, prestigious sons of Southern Kaduna as the commissioner, the inaugural commissioner of that ministry. And then since then, we've seen early warning systems, mechanisms that ministry has been able to create.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Kabir Adamu, for joining us. Brilliant insights, as always. Thank you very much indeed.